Welcome to the It's Not That Hard to Homeschool podcast, where homeschooling is made easy and enjoyable. Hey there, homeschool heroes. I'm Lisa Nehring, your host and fellow homeschooling adventurer. I'm thrilled to share tips and stories that will help you confidently, competently, and even contentedly navigate homeschooling. So let's jump in and make this journey a whole lot of fun. Let me say something that you might feel a little uncomfortable with. Most families are not actually choosing an education plan. They're just making decisions one semester from the next and hoping it all works out. A class here, a program there, a credit because a friend recommended it, a college idea floating somewhere in the background, and then suddenly it's their kid's junior year. Parents are stressed, students feel behind, and everybody is asking the same question. How did we get here? What if the problem is not effort? What if the problem is that no one ever showed families how to build an educational pathway or a personalized learning plan, as I like to call it? Today, we're going to talk about what an educational pathway actually is, what it looks like, and why understanding this concept might be one of the most important decisions you make for your child's future, particularly if you homeschool, but if you use any other kind of educational paradigms, dual degree, dual credit, academic class day, a micro school, etc. Having a good academic pathway is going to be so important to you. Hi, friends. I'm Lisa Nehring from True North Academy, and it's not that hard to homeschool. I believe every parent can homeschool confidently, competently, and even contentedly. I've spent decades working with families who want something better for their kids, not just better grades, but better preparation for real life. And right now, we're living in a moment of massive educational disruption. College costs are rising, career paths are changing faster than our schools can adapt, and parents are realizing they don't just need information, they need clarity. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. So, what is an education pathway? An educational pathway is simply a concept, but very practical and powerful when you put it into practice. A pathway is not just a single class. It's not a transcript checklist. It's not about getting into college. It's a sequence of intentional experiences that move a student forward towards success and independence. It clearly defines what are they about? Who are they? It equips students with skills that have real world value, and they might even garner credentials, experiences, possibly even degrees that open doors while they're in high school and definitely beyond. So think of it this way. A pathway clearly defines and clarifies where the student is going, what skills they need to get there, and what steps are going to get them there with the least amount of waste, both in time, money, and energy. Without a pathway, students and honestly parents are adrift. But with a pathway, students can grow in purpose. Now, I'm going to share a story of one of my students that I've worked with. I've worked with homeschoolers from around the world. Really for the last 14 or 15 years as an academic advisor. And of course, I've worked locally and regionally, creating programs and helping people with transcripts for literally decades. This is one of my favorite students of recent years. Super motivated parents, great kid, a hard worker. But every year they just chose classes based on what sounded good at the moment. And their kids had random credits, overlapping coursework, no clear direction, a growing sense of anxiety about the future. And I hear that over and over. Their kids are in 10th or 11th grade, and they're just like, well, we've done all this work. My kid is a hard worker. What's next? Are we going to get into college? And they're not really even sure what other opportunities are available, but they're not sequentially and systematically building and working towards any specific thing other than a vague sense that getting into college is going to be all and end all. However, I want you guys to keep this in mind. If you're listening, over 50% of students who start their freshman year in college do not complete a college degree. So if you spend all of high school getting ready for college, doing AP and dual degree without a clear path or plan, just think, what if your students are one of those that drops out in the middle of college with no degree? You could have better spent those high school years working towards not just college, but other things as well. That's one of the beautiful things about a pathway is that it's not just a one size fits all or one solution fits all kind of program. Now, the student that I'm talking about loved history. He would spend hours devouring history materials, but his writing was really hit or miss. He hated public speaking. He was okay in math and he tolerated science. But in reality, he really needed to be building skills that he was going to be using as a young adult. The family was not missing effort. The student was a good student. He put effort in. They were missing a pathway. We stepped back and built a clear sequence, strengths, goals, next steps. Everything changed because that student now had confidence about why he was spending his time the way he was. The parents felt calmer. Suddenly, every class had a purpose, whether the student enjoyed it or liked it or not. And again, while the student didn't necessarily love every class, he was very invested in gaining real world skills. Now, here is the reality nobody talks enough about. The old system assumed if you checked the boxes, success would follow. You know the routine. You go to high school, you get good grades, you get into college, you graduate, you get a good job. That's called the educational industrial complex. And that complex is still running. It's wobbling quite a bit as tech advances and old systems become disrupted because honestly, the world has changed. Today, employers care about demonstrated skills, not just degrees, if they even look at the degrees. Technology is transforming entire industries overnight, shutting down some, but creating others out of thin air. So there are some really interesting possibilities and opportunities for our kids if they have the wherewithal to be attuned to that. Now, students need flexibility and adaptability. We saw this in 2020 and 22 as adults with our own careers. Those of us who could be flexible and pivot, we did okay, but I still know people who are still floundering because of the 2020 and 2022. So we've got to teach our kids flexibility and adaptability, communication skills, and critical thinking skills because they need to survive and hopefully thrive in the global gig economy in which they will work and live. In other words, that linear path is gone. The intentional path is essential. So families to win in this new environment aren't doing more. Like you don't have to do more. Let me just assure you, you don't have to do more. You don't have to necessarily spend more. You just have to have a clear path forward. So what I want you to think about is aligning education with future opportunities, your student's strength, and real ROI and ROT, return on investment and return on time. That's what a good, clear pathway can do. Now, another example of a student I've worked with lately, they had started their own business in high school. They were really successful. They had an Etsy shop. They went to craft fairs and they were making some really good money. They thought college was the only successful option. And listen, this kiddo was so burned out on school. She loved the business aspect, but she didn't want to waste time in classes that she didn't feel were going to take her forward. So we built a pathway around the entrepreneurial skills that really lit her up and her future goals of owning her own store and making a full-time living at the craft that she was really garnering skills in. So all of a sudden, instead of feeling behind, she gained momentum. She graduated from high school at 15 with a complete transcript and a successful business already underway with real world skills necessary to support it because we managed her high school program to build in those entrepreneurial skills that we knew she would need: entrepreneurship, accounting, graphic design, photography, etc. All of a sudden, she could see where she was going. She could see why her coursework mattered, and she could see how each and every step was connected. So even if she didn't love the actual classes necessarily, she knew it was taking her forward to where she eventually wanted to be. And that's the power of a pathway. It replaces pressure with purpose. Now, 3 pathway mistakes I see families making all the time. Mistake number 1, and you see this all the time in the homeschool community, particularly, especially with new homeschoolers. They start with classes instead of goals. So classes should support the destination, not become the destination. But a lot of people, when they first change educational paradigms, this is totally normal. I'm not throwing shade in any way. They're like, I know I have to do math. I remember biology from high school, so I need to do those classes. And they start picking and choosing classes instead of where's my student going to go after high school? How do I get them there? Mistake number two, as parents, we confuse busy with progress. A full schedule doesn't equal forward momentum. Now, one of the things we really need our kids to do in this fourth industrial revolution is graduate with real world skills. Can your student communicate well verbally and by written word? Do they have critical thinking skills? Can they collaborate well with people from all sorts of different backgrounds? And are they creative? Are they flexible and adaptable? Do they have entrepreneurial skills? If you're not baking some of those skills into your high school program, you're probably not focused on what's going on right now in the world because you're using an old paradigm. And that, again, is very normal. But our kids can be super busy and not really be making forward momentum. I know a lot of kids in public and private schools who are doing 14 AP classes before they graduate from high school. They are so busy because they are also playing sports, doing jobs, doing their regular high school classes that they can't even hardly breathe. And again, half those kids are going to drop out of college before they graduate. So they've been so busy in high school. They have such a full schedule. But does it really equal forward movement? Are they gaining skills that they can use regardless of a college degree, or skills that they'll use to get their college degree and really make good use of it so that it is a really solid ROI? The third mistake I see families making with creating an educational pathway is they wait too long to create one. Now, a pathway doesn't lock kids in. It actually creates flexibility because decisions become strategic instead of reactive. When I'm doing academic advising with homeschoolers and with other people, I always ask them to make sure that they're aware of unique opportunities in their area so that they can plug them in if it makes sense. We've had some really cool opportunities as we homeschooled. I remember when my older two girls were like in junior high, early high school, they had the opportunity to work with a national barrel racing champion in exchange for mucking out stalls. And that was such a great opportunity. They'd go over there for a couple hours on Saturday, muck out stalls, get a great horseback riding lesson from a champion. It was such a great time for them. And so we had to make room in our schedule for them to do that. So, pathways don't lock you in. They allow you to look at opportunities like that. Political opportunities, theatrical opportunities, STEM opportunities. Maybe you're going to do a Lego League this year or whatever and say, we really want to invest in that with our time and money. So we're going to just pause on some of this stuff over there. If you have a pathway, you don't feel like you're cheating. You have a sense that you're making a strategic decision that is going to take you further down the path and your goals together. So, how do you start building a pathway? Well, you don't need a 5-year master plan tomorrow. Start really simply. Ask your student what kind of problems they enjoy solving. That seems so easy, doesn't it? But some kids might not know right away. And this might be a really different way of interacting with your student. But just ask them, what problems do they enjoy solving? Some kids might have a ready answer, but some might not. And that is okay. You can give them time to think about it. Just revisit that question and maybe offer some solutions based on what you've observed about the things that they enjoy doing and the problems that they enjoy solving. Notice strengths and interests. Now, I've been a parent for so long. I've been around parents and kids for decades working in the field that I do, which is education. And I always notice these parents. It just seems like every 4 or 5 years, there's one particular parent who talks about their gifted kid and how they're going to go do something really amazing, like cure cancer or become an astronaut. I knew this one family, their student, they insisted he was going to become an astronaut. And he was profoundly dyslexic and like 3 or 4 years behind in every subject. I really didn't see that he was astronaut potential, not because of the LDs, but because of his being behind in so many areas. And the parents weren't getting him tutoring. So it just wasn't a really good fit for him. He really floundered in college, and he finally landed on doing a tech degree in cybersecurity, which was a great program for him. He's really been successful, but they spent all of high school focused on he's going to be an astronaut. So they spent a lot of time going to camps and traveling around the country and doing different things. Now, those are all fantastic opportunities for their kids. I don't think those kind of opportunities are wasted in his life in any way. But if they had taken a clear assessment of his strengths and interests and his challenges and weaknesses, they could have maybe like revamped a little bit of what they were doing because they were all so disappointed that that dream wasn't going to become a reality. So notice your kids' strengths and weaknesses, and then help them talk through if they're able to come to fruition. Because as parents, we have more time on this world. We understand the way things work sometimes, and we're able to give our kids those that real world input. I'm not saying being Johnny Raincloud or raining on any kind of dreams or praise they have, but the reality is we can't all be whatever we want. I cannot be an Egyptian pharaoh. Like we are bound by time, space, and reality. And so if your kids want to do something really heavy hitting and hardcore, they need to be the kind of personality that can handle that. And of course, we can all grow into those things too. So if your kid's really invested in something and you think they have a shot at it, I'm saying throw some time and intention towards that. But again, help your kids if you're building a pathway really think through some of that things. And it doesn't have to be all focused on exactly what you think they're going to be doing in life. Because the reality is we've all changed careers as adults, and our kids are going to probably change career fields 13 to 15 times. I mean, not just a shift or a pivot in the same field, but probably completely different industries. So that's just the rate of change that tech and industry is changing, and our kids are going to live and work in that world. So choose classes and experiences that build real skills. I know people who have done writing classes at co-ops for years. There's no feedback loop, and kids learn best when they're not practicing incorrect things all the time. So if you're in an academic or class day program where there's not a good feedback loop, especially for skill-based um, subjects like writing or math, they're just practicing things that they're doing incorrectly. You've got to have a solid feedback loop in order to learn and grow. So choose classes and experiences that build real skills. Look for opportunities to stack credentials and experiences intentionally. A lot of times, colleges and universities are giving scholarships out to students with a standout factor. We have several blog posts and podcasts about developing your kids' standout factor. Look, if they're going to a school that takes smart students, everybody who applies there is a smart student. So your kids have to have a standout factor. And that's the same thing with an astronaut. It's a very competitive field. If your kid wants to be going towards a competitive field like becoming an astronaut, they have to be super competitive and have a standout factor. So look for opportunities to stack credentials and experiences intentionally. Invite your kids into the things you love, because the things you love are probably the things that you're very good at, and your kids can be that much farther ahead, standing on your shoulders. Now, as you're building your kids' pathway, think direction, not perfection. A pathway can absolutely evolve, but it gives you a map while you're working on the goal and as you're moving forward towards that goal. I tell families this all the time. Clarity changes everything. When students understand why they're learning something, motivation rises. Now, we put kids in classes all the time, and we don't tell them why. We just say, this is your class, this is what you're doing, here's your schedule for the year. And we don't even really talk to them about it or help them make sense of the classes that we've involved them in. So helping our kids understand why they're in the classes we've chosen, it's going to help their motivation. And honestly, once they hit high school, I think sitting down with your kids and talking about what classes they want to be in versus what classes you think they should be in, and coming to the meeting of the minds for all of that is going to help your kid with motivation too. When parents see the road ahead, anxiety drops. And if we see the road ahead and we can convey that to our kids, their anxiety might drop as well, which is good for everybody. Education becomes less about surviving high school and more about launching a capable adult. And that is honestly the real goal, right? So if today's conversation made you realize you might need more clarity around your students' next steps, you're not alone. At True North Academy, pathways are literally what we do. Whether your student is headed towards college, an associate's or bachelor's degree, trades, or something entrepreneurial, we help families build educational plans that actually lead somewhere that is going to help your student launch as a capable adult who can handle themselves. in this crazy disrupted world that we live in, right? Head on over to our website at truenorthhomeschool.academy to explore our pathway options, or check the links below for resources to help you start thinking strategically today. And if this episode helped you, would you just do me a favor? Follow the podcast, share it with another homeschool parent, and leave a quick review. It helps more families find clarity instead of chaos. Until next time, I'm Lisa with True North Academy, and it's not that hard to homeschool. Stay encouraged, stay intentional, and keep heading true north. I'll talk to you next time.